Hello and welcome to the Empower Yourself Summit. My name is Pamela McAlexander and I will be your host. Today I have a wonderful gentleman with me, and there is so much I can tell you about this man. His name is Anthony Chambers, and Anthony is an author, a keynote motivational speaker. He is a personal power coach and a radio talk show host. And I wasn't really too sure what a personal power coach was, and I'm going to let Anthony tell you all about how he's identified as a personal power coach. But just to let you know a little of information about him, the two weekly radio programs that he does, Pay It Forward Show and Discover Your Power, talks a lot about local agencies and individuals making a positive difference while introducing subject matter and topics of interest and concern to inform, inspire, and empower the listeners. The Pay It Forward show may be heard on WFLM 104.7 FM and WIRA 1400 AM station on Thursday evenings at 7 p.m., and that is Eastern Time. And the Discover Your Power show provides the listener with practical life-enhancing strategies that may be employed by anyone seeking personal improvement and self-discovery. Discover Your Power may be heard Saturdays on WIRA 1400 AM 11 to noon. Both shows can actually be streamed via the World Wide Web at WIRA1400am.com. But just to tell you a little bit about Anthony, he conducts personal development programs for Indian River State College's Upward Bound program. And he does this by encouraging confidence and recognition of the resilience in young men and women to become independent thinkers, deliberate creators, effective communicators, and lifelong learners to pursue their dreams. He is retired. He is the retired founder and CEO of a charter school in California. He has been dedicated to the youth of the high desert communities of California for more than 2 decades. And in his dedication to education, he has established the pathways that are essential for the development of his community's at-risk population. And in doing so, he arrived at a destination that has been the impetus of this conviction: to educate and bring self-awareness to all that hear him or read his works. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Anthony Chambers.
Hello there, and thank you so much for the gracious introduction.
Wonderful. Well, as you know, Dr. Chambers, we are focusing on empowering yourself. And obviously, this is a topic that you have spent a lifetime doing for at-risk youths just across the world with regards to men and women both. And we're focusing primarily on self-doubt and fears. And I wonder, to begin our interview, if you wouldn't mind giving us a struggle that you went through involving fear or self-doubt, and how you got through it to come out on the other end where you are today, doing obviously what it is that you love to do.
Well, I'd like to first start with my mission. As a result of my struggle, I guess you would say I've gone from mess to message. That's the best way I can determine it. But in reality, my mission is to elevate the consciousness of this planet, be it collectively or one individual at a time, to understand their inherent value and power, and through the acceptance of these ideas, discover joy. And I have been on a mission of self-discovery ever since I can remember. I'm the son of a Baptist minister, so you can imagine the upbringing that I had, very, very Christian and spiritual background. And I just seem to have needed more. And in my search for more, I've come through this place of self-discovery that I share with you today. But in terms of my personal hardships, I was a young man growing up in Los Angeles, and I was kind of a ladies' guy, but I was very, very loving, but very insecure about who I was. And but on my mission, you naturally it's like a young gunslinger. You go out and you put notches in your gun.
Right.
So in fact, I wrote a book about this piece called "When My Name Was Selfish." And when my name was selfish, I thought about this young guy who was coming up through adolescence, trying to discover who he was, and realized through his own personal insecurities he had a need to control others. And then turning the light inward to myself, discovering that there is something special inside me. Why do I have that need? Let me find that being and that person. And through many, many struggles, I finally discovered him. I got married at a very, very young age, and I began to have children. And I didn't really want children. And so, well, it's the old adage, if you don't like what you're doing, stop doing what you're doing, or change what you're doing, you get a different result.
Right.
But I was young and didn't figure it out at the time, and I hadn't quite learned the real rules of the law of attraction just yet. But I did discover that they're always working for us, and they're working for us and with us, whether we're aware of it or not. And it's the awareness that changes our lives and make us become more empowered to live the lives that we want to live. But in my particular issue, as I had children, I had my first daughter, and I'm like, okay, that's nice, so no more. And then I next had a son about 9 months later, and right afterwards, and I'm like, okay, that's nice, no more. And then finally we had another one, and this one seemed to be my love child, and I wanted him, but after 2.5 months he was dead.
Oh.
And what happened in that particular instance, my wife was on drugs, and he was a drug baby, and we didn't even know it.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know it, I should say. And but when he passed away, I asked God, I said, Lord, take me, don't take my baby.
Right.
And in that prayer, something came to me and said, well, Anthony, if you go away, what will happen to your other 2 children? And as a result, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps, and I raised my son and daughter. They're now 38 and 39 years old. Wow. and parents of their own. And they take responsibility for raising me.
Right.
But going through that particular scenario, I wanted to blame her. I wanted to blame many reasons as to the death of my child. But when I took responsibility of the idea of what I had put out there in the universe, coming up as a kid, having so many dates and so many relationships, just reckless relationships with young girls, not realizing that I was leaving a part of me with each of them,
right.
Not realizing that this reckless behavior could cause a number of other issues, but realizing that, okay, the disrespect that I had for women at that time, raising a little son and daughter, gave me a whole new respect. Having wine glasses on chill and having them bathed and in bed and logs on the fireplace, thinking of auditioning new mothers. It was an adventure all by itself. But the hardships of doing that and understanding what a woman gives to a relationship, what she gives to a family. I was put in a position to do that, to wash the clothes, comb my daughter's hair. She'd go to school and say, my daddy combed my hair. The struggles of trying to maintain a household, because I was a homeowner at the time, so maintaining a household and raising my son and daughter, it was quite the adventure. But I grew from the experience, and I learned about this thing, the power of attraction, the principle of attraction, that, I put something out there that came back to visit me. Right. What I'm saying to you and the listeners is that, our thoughts have power. Our thoughts are life. Our thought is energy. And then when it's coupled with our emotion, I say that everything in life is based on a male and female principle. The male being your thought, the emotion being the female. And when those two things come together, it must manifest and produce the idea of what it was focused upon. It's like you put a male plug into a female wall socket. Voila, you have light.
Right.
So we have to understand that we have a power, an inherent power, that we're using frivolously, and we're using it against ourselves on a daily basis.
Wow. That is a very powerful message in and of itself, is it not?
No question. I mean, once we are aware, it's all about awareness. I like to say that we have superpowers on this planet, just like when Superman landed on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
His body molecular structure caused him to be strong because he was here on this planet. Well, for us, ours is thought, our power of choice, how we choose to use those thoughts. And those thoughts coupled with emotion can create, it has summoning power. And that summoning power can bring into your experience whatever you desire. However, if we're unaware of it, we are drawing in so much negativity in our lives because that's what we're accustomed to. We're environmental animals, and we have to learn that the real truth is the idea that's inside, not what's coming from the outside.
Wow. Now, you had mentioned the law of attraction. For the listeners that didn't fully understand that, when you were putting out to the universe that you didn't want children, you actually, in fact, have 7, do you not?
Yes, well, that's the law of attraction working again. See, whatever you focus on expands.
Right.
I'm focusing on I don't want children. All the universe got was you want children. I often say God has a morbid sense of humor, but in reality, my whole life has evolved around that. I have 7 children, and I created organizations thereafter to save other children that were being orphaned by drugs. And as a result, I spent 25 years developing a youth center and a charter school working with that population of young people that we have made successful. And that is one of the true successes of my life.
Tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, when all of this happened with your wife and putting yourself in a situation then where, there are a lot of children out there that were exposed to parents that were addicted to drugs. Tell me about this school that, this program that you created out in California.
Well, I looked at an area, a community in which I lived, and you hear about the violence across America that's all happening at the same place, at the same time. And I wondered, I said, do the kids really understand the finality of taking a pistol and shooting someone? One of the gifts that we're offering with this interview is an interview with a young man that was shot 14 times that survived, and it's a radio program that I think the listeners would really, really enjoy. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the law of attraction as well. But my programs were about, my organization became a surrogate parent, if you will.
Right.
I had young people that are now grown with children, so I have a number of godchildren, you can imagine. I for a guy that didn't want children, ended up with 7. I feel like Abraham in the Bible, a father of many nations.
Right.
I developed programs that would create a launching pad for a kid to become whatever he wanted to become. But the most important thing is that I understood that before a kid cares how much you know, he needs to know how much you care. And so I created an environment where I would introduce myself to them as Anthony, but due to the respect factor, they started calling me Mr. Chambers by their choice.
Oh.
As a result, by me giving them respect, they respected me. And they would honor the rules that I would put down for them because they wanted the accountability. They wanted the discipline. They wanted to be held accountable. And so in doing that, I developed a boxing program. I says, well, if you're frustrated, come get in the ring and work it out. And the beauty of it is that after they would box in the ring, it's a funny thing about young males. We have this Neanderthalish behavior. You just have to know who the top dog is. So, I started a boxing program, a United States amateur boxing program, the first ever to happen in that community. And it grew into a summer food program where we fed kids in the summer. It grew into an after-school program with tutoring and homework assistance, and then it grew into anger management and drug and alcohol classes and victim awareness classes. And then I partnered with the probation department, whereas these kids could come and do their restitution at my youth center. So they had an opportunity to learn and be with me and through me. And as a result of that, we found that kids were struggling with their reading ability, and they were being lumped into all these different labels, ADD, I said the whole alphabet,
Yeah,
HIJK,
yeah, exactly.
But in reality, these are kids that are longing for recognition. These are kids that are longing for love and for someone to tell them that they are beautiful and that they are special and that they are unique. And so we started doing gift assessments to find out what the kids' gifts really were and to nurture those gifts.
Wow.
Nurturing their strengths and then letting them know who they are. And that's one of the things that I want people to know on this planet is that once we understand who we are, that we are co-creators with the powers of the universe, we can do, become, have anything that we truly desire. And it's just a matter we are just the right information away from having all those things. Wow.
Now, you teach now down in Florida, right?
Yes, in fact, I'm in my classroom as we speak. I have an hour and a half break between my group of young people. These young people are going to be some of the most enlightened beings on this planet. They will no longer walk around in the trance of mediocrity or this mundane, quiet lives of desperation. These kids are walking out of here fired up in the morning. In fact, we do emotional assessments on them each morning. When they come in, I ask them where they are on a scale from 0 to 10, and 10 being feeling the best and 0 being the lowest. And oftentimes when they come in my room, they come in feeling a 3 or a 4, but when they leave, they're 9s and 10s. So the emotional vibration of these kids have changed dramatically just from being in the room. And so once they get this information, that becomes their emotional set point where they can draw into their experience all the things that they truly desire.
Wow. Now, this kind of leads me into this personal power coach, title. And clearly, with everyone that you touch, you focus so much on their own individual personal power.
Yes. Well, the idea is this, oftentimes, and coming from a religious family, and I'm not religious any longer. I like to say I'm spiritual. But coming from religious, we've been taught that the power is all outside of us. We're praying to some deity, trying to convince them to bless us and give us what we need. When in reality, that's not in God's scope of work. He's put certain tools in place for us to operate in. I call them the power principles. In my book, Power Up Your Faith and Take Charge of Your Life, I call them the power principles. These are the principles that the Christ used, if you would. And he said that these things that I do, you shall do greater things than these. And it's because we're unaware of this power, we're not operating within it. So we're operating within it, I should say, but we're using it more to our detriment than we are to our betterment. Simply because if we knew better, we would do better. So my mission is to bring them into that awareness. For example, we pray to God and say, okay, I need this and I need that. But when we're praying for this, we're coming from a position of need.
Right.
Well, the Bible says, if you come into my courts with praise and thanksgiving, then you got action. Okay, so that's your entree, is that you want to come in from a place of joy. If the universe or God, whatever you want to call it, the God of your understanding, meets you where you are. It greets you however you come to it. Right. If you come to it with sadness, it will give you more sadness. Right. If you come to it with gladness, it will give you more gladness. See, whatever you come to it with, it's going to bless you abundantly with it.
And again, that's where that law of attraction principle comes into play.
That is it. All the sages of the ages believe and agree upon this one thing, and I don't care what the religion is that so as a man thinketh in his heart is he. So what are we thinking? What is our mental climate? What kind of mental currency are we spending daily? That's the question of the day. Are you spending it thinking about all that you don't have? When we talk about we want money, in most cases we're thinking about the absence of money as opposed to thinking about what we will do when we are spending money.
Right.
I try to tell my clients all the time, I say the most important thing to ask yourself is, what do you want? Number 2, why do you want it? Now, why is a question that will create the essence and the emotion of what it is that you desire. when you say I want money, well, this money will change my life. It'll change where I live. It'll change the legacy that I leave for my children. It will change. You understand? And that's where we need to live, not in the place that, oh, I got to pay this bill, and Lord knows, oh, Lord, please send me this money. Or, that bill is coming up and it's due next week. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, if that's the mental currency you're spending, you're going to get more of that.
Right. Right. And it's just like when, we have so many people that blame God for their lot in life. I mean, you could have done that, Anthony, when you lost your son. Absolutely. You could have looked and said, why? Why did you take him from me? Everybody is always questioning rather than understanding that there's a lesson there. There's a path there. There's a leading into your growth and development.
Well, Pamela, that's a powerful statement. I'm glad you mentioned that, because interesting enough, I never went there.
I know.
I never went there. I just knew that I had to pull it together in order to take care of the other two. That's what stuck in my head. But when I hear you share that point, see, why do you want to know why? I mean, because if you want to know why, are you looking for that again?
Right.
The idea is this. Okay, what is the gift in this circumstance? What is the message here? And if you get quiet to remove yourself from the emotional charge of that particular situation, because you cannot change a situation with the same mind that created it.
Oh, I love that.
You have to take a step back, and breathe. And that's, breath. Breathing is the most important thing that we can do, and not to mention that you couldn't live without it.
Right.
But if we take a moment to take a step back and just breathe and to breathe in the peace of God and release the negative emotion that you're carrying within, breathe in and do that at least 3 times and then come back to the situation. It's kind of like a parent who punishes a child when he's angry. That doesn't work very well. That's where child abuse comes in. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
The idea is to wait till you have removed the emotional charge out of the situation so you can look at it from a fresh perspective.
What's that old saying? Time out is just as beneficial for me as it is for you.
Absolutely. And so asking what is the gift in this circumstance, it brings to mind the principle of polarity. There can be no up without down. There can be no in without out. Without out, yes. Mm-hmm. And there could be no sadness without joy. So life is about a coin, and it's heads or tails. It determines what side is facing up.
Right.
So the idea is to understand that in every troubling circumstance also lies its own solution. You see, it's just a matter of where you are on the emotional or vibrational scale of that particular circumstance. You see? And so if we take a step back and understand that particular point, it says, okay, it can go either way. So how do I want to look at it? That's like looking at the glass half full or half empty. It's all perspective.
Wow. Well, I have to ask you real quick, in talking a little bit about the free gift that you're offering our listeners,
Yes.
Would you give us just kind of a brief explanation to the title of that particular interview that you did? And basically this free gift is an interview that you conducted with a young man who had been shot 14 times. And you don't have to give away the farm here as to what it's about, but I will tell our listeners that, this is a wonderful story, and it is a very powerful story, and it is an interview that I highly recommend that you listen to. But basically the title that you gave it, because I don't want people to look at it and go, okay, I don't understand. So if you wouldn't mind at least just kind of explaining the title of that particular interview.
No problem. I met a gentleman, I was leaving the radio station one day, and a gentleman had a hat on, and it said God Soldier, and it was spelled Soulja, God Soldier. And, it was a hip-hop, way of a kid saying soul and Jah, as in the Jamaican name for God. And this young man was developing a clothing line, and on the back of the hat it said, less of me, more of God. And I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. I'm curious to know what his perspective is. So I invite him over in the studio, and we start talking. And the message was incredible. We just kind of locked. And so believe me, it's not so much about God as it is the idea of our personal power and how we draw circumstances into our life experiences. That's the powerful point about it. And so we share our stories as to how we recognized or came to understand this power principle called the principle of attraction.
Wonderful, wonderful. Before we finish up here today, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind, is there some piece of wisdom, guidance, information that you can share with our listeners right now that will help them get started on their path, on their journey to empowering themselves? What would it be?
I think number one is let's throw out the window all the things that anyone else has ever said about you that troubled you. I say, go in the mirror, look yourself in the mirror, and give yourself a hug. Be grateful for this magnificent body, regardless of what shape it is to you or what the media says is beautiful or isn't. And give yourself a hug and love on you. Look yourself in the eyes, because that's who you are. That's where your soul is. And look in the eyes of that individual and say, I love you. I love you. And you are powerful beyond measure. And I tell you, if they reach out and we can share with them more about just how powerful they are and embracing themselves and understanding that don't blame it on God, don't blame it as some people do on Satan or the devil. Take responsibility for your life. And then you can make the adjustments. Because if you put the blame on someone else, then it's already a wrap. You have no power. There's nothing you can do to change how somebody else feels about you.
Right.
But right. You have the power. And because when you take responsibility for your life, you have the power to make the necessary choices, changes in your thought. Because if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change.
Awesome. Well, what a wonderful way to look at taking your power back.
Yes. Thank you.
I really appreciate your time today, your being with us. I believe our listeners are going to truly benefit both from this interview as well as from the radio show recording that you're giving as your free gift. And I highly recommend that you check out Dr. Chambers, and his website link will be on the email. So I recommend that you click on it and see what he is about, what he has to offer, and definitely listen to that interview with God's soldier. Thank you, Dr. Chambers. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Pamela. I'm humbled that you invited me, and I'm happy to have spent the time with you.
Thank you.